It looks like it actually went live with no start screen, so I think we'll just go ahead and get started. We'll give folks a moment or two to join, and then we will get started here. So, welcome to Postman. I'm Ian Douglas. I'm a senior developer advocate at the company, and with me I have Becca Hara-Weigel. And appreciate your time today, Becca. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
And yeah, so we're going to give folks a couple of minutes to join us. And if you want to drop by chat and say hi, you can just drop that here. Let's see. Chat overlay. So we'll actually see some chat comments over here kind of while we get started and get chatting here as we go. So we'll give folks a few minutes to join us on YouTube and LinkedIn. And let's just make sure that the LinkedIn event is actually live. We're live on LinkedIn. Cool. All right. Well, welcome. We got a few folks on LinkedIn already, so that was really quick. Speaking of Nick, we were talking about Nick before we went live. Good to see you, Nick. Thanks for hanging out today. Got all
Hello.
kinds of folks from LinkedIn coming by. We should have a whole bunch of folks from YouTube and Twitch as well. So yeah, big hello to everybody. Thanks for joining us today. It's my first time using Restream, so I apologize for the lack of the launch page. I wasn't sure how to actually kick that off, but yeah, we appreciate everybody coming by today. And so, just as a recap, we have Becca with us today. Becca, um, we'll get into some introductions in a moment, but I've known Becca for a little while through a community that you built, and we'll get into more explanation of what that's all about as we kind of go through our blindfold challenge for today. So you may see in the topic that we're choosing a random API. We're actually not going to be doing API work today. We're actually going to be scraping some data and seeing how to do that inside of Postman. And we're going to tinker with a little bit of JavaScript and see how we can pull some interesting data and maybe visualize that data and do some fun stuff there. So good to see you, everybody. We got a ton of people on LinkedIn right now, which is
So I'm
fantastic.
trying to figure out how to comment.
Oh yeah. I think if you see the chat overlay in Restream, I think you might be able to drop a message in there. Otherwise, you're welcome to just go hang out on the LinkedIn event,
Yeah,
and
I
you
lost
can.
the chat.
Did you? Okay. Um, yeah. So on LinkedIn, we will be dropping links kind of as we go throughout the morning. We have a number of segments that we usually do, like in case you missed it, and we'll be dropping links for a collection that we're going to use today. That if you were logged into your Postman account and you make a workspace, you'll be able to fork this collection over and kind of follow along with us today. We got a little over an hour of content kind of planned out. We'll see how far we go, but we should be live on YouTube and Twitch as well. So good to have everybody hanging out with us. And like I said, uh, we will be dropping links in chat kind of as we go. So big hello from all over the world. Looks like we've got folks coming in from all over the place. So really good to see everybody dropping by. So we'll give everyone another moment or two. So let's just do quick introduction. So again, my name is Ian Douglas. I'm a senior developer advocate here at Postman. And with me, I've got Becca. So Becca, why don't you introduce us? Tell us like what do you do for work and where do you work? What's your day-to-day kind of role like?
Yeah, sure. So I am Becca. I'm actually a career changer. So I spent 10 years teaching college English before moving into tech. So I've been doing this for about 3 years. I was a front end developer contractor for a couple of years. And then at the end of January, I started as technical community builder at DeepGram. And that in between there, I accidentally started a community called Virtual Coffee, and we've got a ton of volunteers and maintainers who help support making it a welcoming community in tech for developers at all stages of the journey.
That's awesome. Cool. And I've been a big fan of Virtual Coffee. We'll get into that a little bit more in a minute. We'd like to start these live streams with a segment called In Case You Missed It. And so we're going to talk a little bit about some of the changes and updates that we've seen in Postman lately. So I'm just going to shrink our chat overlay here for just a moment. Remember how to do that. There we go. Chat overlay. So I want to start with our blog. We had a new blog post come out this week where we talk about a partnership that we're doing between Postman and the BITS Pilani School in India, and how we're promoting API literacy through their education program. So you can go check that out. It's a new endeavor. But it's actually not something new to Postman. We've actually got these student programs that we've been working for quite a while. And if you scroll down on this page, you'll see a map of like all of the places where we're involved. And so we're really excited to be a part of working with Bits Pilani. But we've got student education groups all over the world that we work with as part of Postman. So you can definitely check out the student program. If you are in an education space or you are a student, you can totally reach out to Postman and get some more information about this. We've got events and stuff and conferences and meetups and so on. We've got expert programs, student leader programs, we've got classroom programs, we've got all kinds of content and curriculum and so on that you can take a look at there. Um, let's see the other things that we can talk about within Postman. Some of the more recent changes that we've made. We've got some new events that have to do with collection views, and the search integration within the Postman tool just got expanded quite a lot. So we are now grouping results, and we have more intelligent matching for things like looking for URLs within your requests, as well as searching for teams. And we've got some new search functionality for flows. If you've used our no code flows, if you tuned into our stream 2 weeks ago, where a bunch of us were playing with our Internet of Things lights, you would have seen us demonstrate flows. And we now have some search capability in there as well. And then one thing that's coming up pretty soon is let me go find that note really quick. Nope, now I lost my notes. Um, Oh, we have something new that's going to be coming out soon, very soon, is the ability to fork environments. And so if you're working as part of a team where you want to build an environment and share that environment across your team, we are very soon going to have the capability of making forks and pull requests of those environments. So you'll be able to manage those a little bit more. And then also on our blog, if we go back to the blog for just a moment, back up here to our main blog. Joyce has also published a new blog post based on a live stream that she did with Miguel Grinberg from Twilio a couple of weeks back, and they have since launched that new live stream API that Miguel was demoing for us, where we were doing a live stream within a live stream. We had kind of live stream inception going on that day, and that was a lot of fun to watch. Miguel kind of pull up live streaming, and some of us were connecting to his live stream as part of this live stream. It was a lot of fun. So we've got a blog post talking about that launch as well. So that was in case you missed it, and I will share all these links as well. So I'm going to drop some links in chat, and I will also be dropping these links over in LinkedIn for you as well as we go. All right, so Becca, for today's challenge, so tell us a little bit more about the virtual coffee community that you've built. It kind of brings together a lot of developers to chat about things like best practices, mentorship, and more. And as I understand it, virtual coffee was recently recognized in some cool, fun way. So can you tell us a little bit more about that and how virtual coffee got started?
Yeah, sure. So, thanks for bringing it up. We won, I think it's most welcoming developer community. Um, eh, and if that's not the right title, I'm sorry. That's just what I think of us as. Um, that was for the DevRel Awards, and that was a really big surprise. I think I felt like we were the underdogs in that category. I knew that we have a really welcoming community. Um, and it all started because I had been working in tech for about 8 months when the pandemic hit. And I suddenly found myself without work on the day that my kids got sent home from school. Hey, Carmen, I have 4 kids. And so I was trying to do this school at home thing and really interview for the first time because I when I graduated boot camp, I just put out a job tweet. This is what I'm looking for. I was looking for part-time, flexible, front end work, or it didn't have to be front end. I did a boot camp that was I did Ruby and Rails, and I did JavaScript and React. And then I found a job that week. I was working as an
Wow.
independent contractor with Dan Ott. We had a conversation. It's like he seems like a really nice person that I would like to work with, and that was it. So we started working together, and then when I lost that job, I was interviewing for these positions, and I'm like, People had said that interviewing was soul crushing, and I always thought like, oh, it can't be soul crushing. And then I was doing it, and I was like, oh, okay, yeah, this is soul crushing. Um, and so I posted on or I tweeted, hey, does anybody want to meet up for virtual coffee? And it turns out that all of the challenges that I was going through, all of the isolation and feeling alone, and what am I doing in this world? I wasn't the only one feeling that. And so we started meeting once a week. And then within a couple weeks, folks were like, well, what about people on the West Coast? Can you have a second time? So then I did like double sessions one week where we met in the morning and in the afternoon. And my introvert self said, well, I can't do that anymore. But we just kept going and we've gone with the momentum ever since. So more people have come. We continue to meet each other, to support each other through all different circumstances, learning, new jobs, promotions, all of that stuff. And so it's just been a really great and supportive place to be.
Yeah. And you've got a community now around the world that are using virtual coffee.
Yeah.
And it's a really fantastic Slack community. Do you know roughly how many users you have in the Slack community? And
Yeah.
it's a
So
lot.
we do. So we try one of our big things is like keeping it an intimate group because we feel that there are so many Slack or Discords that you can go into and you have thousands of people. So we've been really deliberate about how to um keep it intimate in that way. And we're actually taking a pause on new members right now as we work through these ways to continue to support people and support the huge growth that we've seen. But we have about 650 members in our Slack. A decent number of members are pretty active. And I was trying to think, I always want to figure, I can't remember how many time zones. Let me see here. No, wait. If I do, okay, I'm just gonna test this by doing at channel. So it usually says like, "Do you really want to do that?" So I'll say no. Okay, we have 18 time zones.
Wow.
Yeah, and some
Fantastic.
people, we have some folks from Australia, and it's like 1 a.m. when they come to virtual coffee. It's great. I love it.
Yep. Well, huge amount of love in chat right now for virtual coffee for sure. Lots of folks chiming in on LinkedIn as well, saying wonderful initiative. So yeah, I absolutely agree. I think that this is a fantastic kind of community. One of the things that I like most about virtual coffee, because this is something that I like to do on the side, is help people find jobs. And there's a whole group of people within the community that are just there to help people. Like, how can I help you with that job support? How can we help you find that job in tech? Now, one thing I've noticed as I kind of look around the API landscape as part of my job at Postman is to like go find interesting APIs and so on, is there are a lot of APIs for employers to go post a job on specific platforms, but there are no APIs yet for job seekers who are looking for a job. You have to go know what all these different sites are, and you have to actually go log into each one of those, go do searches and so on. And so, what I'd like to do for today's challenge is can we go scrape some job data off of one of these popular job sites? And can we do something interesting with that data? Now, we're not going to go build an API. We're not going to build an API today. But I would like to get to a point where we can do something fun later on, maybe with that data. But before we go too much further, I do want to kind of give us a little caveat here. Please, folks that are watching, please read the terms and conditions of websites where you want to scrape data. Most of them are going to say don't scrape our data for commercial use. And we are only exploring this today for educational purposes only, for using Postman to scrape some data and do some fun visualizations and so on. So we're not actually doing anything with this data. We just want to have some fun learning about how to kind of pick apart some HTML and see about how we write this stuff in JavaScript within the Postman sandbox environment. Got a handful of people say, "Give me all the data." So yeah, I agree. It would be great if such an API existed, but you do have to be careful with scraping data for commercial use because um, it can get into tricky legal areas for sure. So what we're going to start by doing is we're going to share Becca's screen in a moment, and we're going to watch Becca's process for how to go look up some documentation for a scraping library in JavaScript called Cheerio, just like this breakfast cereal. And we're going to see how we can use that in Postman. So I'm going to drop a couple of links in chat if folks want to follow along. The first link is going to be a Postman collection that you can fork. So you will need to be logged into your Postman account, and I'm going to drop these links in chat right here. If you are logged into Postman, you can go make a workspace for yourself. And I'm going to talk Becca through how to make a workspace and then how to fork this collection so you'll be able to follow along. But this link is basically going to get you to a starting point where if we copy this collection over to your workspace, you'll be able to kind of get started with this. Um, so Becca, let's go ahead and we're going to share your screen here. If you want to pull up that link that I just shared, let me drop it in the private chat here for you as well.
Oh, yep.
And the first thing you're going to have to do is actually create a workspace. So the first thing we're going to do, since you are logged in on Postman, we're going to go up to the Workspaces link at the top left corner, and
Um,
from there you should have a button. Right on the menu bar where it says Home and Workspaces and so on.
I see.
Yep.
Sorry.
And from there, we're going to click on the button in the top right that says Create Workspace. So we're going to make a new workspace here, and we'll call this. We'll just call it like Blindfold Challenge or something like that. And you're welcome to make this private if you like. You don't have to make it public. Some restrictions are if you make a private workspace and you create a collection there, you can't really share that out with other people without changing the visibility. If you want to make it public, that's fine too. So go ahead and click on the button that says Create Workspace. And once we get in here, I'll have you zoom in. Actually, the zoom level here I think is going to be okay. So if you want to click on that link that I shared in Restream, then that's going to open my collection. And so
Okay.
other folks, um, yeah, and then we'll get folks, or we'll get you to increase your font size here as well. I'm just going to turn off the chat just so this will increase the size a little bit. So the collection that we're going to copy over is the Blindfold Challenge. So next to the word Blindfold Challenges, you see the three dots. We're going to click on that, and we're going to go down to Create a Fork. This is now going to fork this collection. So you can give it a label, and you can just give it your name. You can just call it Becca. And then the location is going to be the workspace where we're going to fork this. So we'll put that into your Blindfold Challenge workspace and then say fork the collection. And this is going to get us started here today. Cool. So now that we've got that copied over, so now we're on your workspace and we're looking at this Blindfold Challenge. So let's expand the Blindfold Challenge folder here on the left a little bit. You'll see a little caret arrow. Yep. So we'll expand that. And inside of here, we have a folder called Web Scraping in Postman. So we'll expand that one. And if you click on Web Scraping in Postman, there's going to be some documentation in here. And this has that second link. So you'll notice the documentation link over here on the side. And I'm going to copy this in chat for folks as well. And this link is basically how do we see a list of all of the JavaScript libraries that we have access to inside of Postman. So within the Postman environment, we have access to a whole bunch of JavaScript libraries. And so if you want to click on that link, it'll open in a new tab in your browser here. And if you want to zoom in just a little bit on this, so if you want to Command plus a couple times, these are all of the libraries that are built into Postman. And so we have AJV, which is like some contract testing for API contracts. We can convert from ASCII to binary back and forth. We have Chai for testing, and then there's our Cheerio. We've also got some interesting things like Crypto.js. If you want to go check out our blog, Vikram wrote a really cool blog post on how to use Crypto.js, and I think there's a collection as well for how to do different kinds of encryption and decryption, all within Postman. We got Moment.js if you want to do like time conversions. TV4 is another validator for JSON schemas and so on. So we've got a lot of stuff available to us in here. But today we're going to be looking at the Cheerio library. So you can click on Cheerio. That's just going to take you over to Cheerio's webpage, which I think you've already got open in another tab. But this is basically just going to link over to them. Yep. Cool. So we're going to spend some time kind of looking through the Cheerio documentation. But let's go back to our web scraping in Postman. That'll be your second tab. And what we're going to do here is we're going to look at this link that says, or the request over on the left side that says get our data. So go ahead and click where it says get our data over on the left side
Yep.
there.
Sorry, I was looking
There
at
we
the chat.
go. No worries. No worries. Someone says the workspace is not showing up. So you will need to be logged in on Postman in order to access that and make a copy. So if you do have other questions about that, you're welcome Um, you're welcome to go open up our community forum and you can ask questions there. Someone was saying it's a CORS issue. There shouldn't be a CORS issue yet. Um, so what we're going to look at here is you'll notice the test tab right in the middle. It has a little dot next to it. If you can discern the color green, there's a green dot next to the word tests. And we're going to go ahead and click on that test tab. And this is basically the code that we write in here is going to execute once we send this request to go fetch some data. And all I've done in here is I've added a snippet. You'll see this little section on the right side that says snippets. These are little JavaScript blocks of code that we can pre-populate in here that say like, hey, if the status code is a 200, if that request worked out okay, then go execute the code inside of this function. And that's basically where we're going to start here. As long as we can go hit a website and get some data back, we're going to execute what's inside this block. And so all we've done here is we're saying go grab all that raw text, so the pm.response.text, and that's going to be all of our raw HTML. And then we're going to load that into Cheerio. So then we can do some interesting things from there about how are we going to search for, interesting things to scrape out of that HTML. So now we have to try to figure out, well, what do we want to go scrape? Um, so now that we've got all of this set up, I would say let's go think of a job website. Like let's go to Indeed.com. So if you want to open a new browser tab, Becca, and let's go over to Indeed.com. And again, please make sure that you're reading terms and conditions when it comes to scraping data. So a lot of the folks on Virtual Coffee are probably looking for that first job in tech. So in the keyword section here, let's search for like entry level roles for like entry level JavaScript or something like that. And the location, let's pick like a really populated kind of area where we're certain to find some jobs. Like let's find like New York City or San Francisco or something like that, where there's more likely to be some jobs. Cool. So we see a lot of results here. We see 43 different jobs for entry level JavaScript. So, Becca, what do you think we would need to do here to get this data into Postman? What do you think we might need to do
Well, I imagine there's some kind of job APA. No, oh my gosh, APA. I my brain. So I
here?
I taught college English for many years, and we talked about documenting your resources. APA
Mhm.
is one way to do it. I
Yeah, no worries.
My brain has
So,
decided to go back.
yeah, so unfortunately, Indeed doesn't have an API to
Oh,
go
right,
scrape
right.
this data.
Yes,
That's
we
why we're
talked about
doing
that.
web scraping today.
Yep.
Yeah, so we need to
Oh
find
boy.
some other way of how can we load this data into Postman.
Okay, so there's got to be a format. It looks like all of these job cards have a similar format. It lets you know the link, the name of the company, and so maybe if we can look at that, that will help us to pull it in.
Yep. So what we can do here is we can actually grab the URL from your browser where it says indeed.com/jobs and so on. Let's paste that into Postman as our URL that we're going to go
Here we
fetch.
go.
So we're going to replace that whole URL thing there where it just has that. Yep, we're just going to replace that whole thing. And now what we're going to do is where you see the word params, you're going to see a green dot next to that.
Yep.
Again, if you can discern the color green. And what it's done is it's actually gone through and it's actually pulled out all those query parameters for us. Now we actually don't need this VJK. This is just some sort of like validation thing that they're doing on their side. And so all we really need is the Q, which is our query, and the L, which is our location. Now we can see that it's done some URL escaping here for us where it put like a %20 in for a space character. And so we can actually just change those in our query parameters here where we can change this value to whatever we like. We can make it like entry level Python or something, and we don't have to do the %20. Postman's going to take care of that for us. We can just put spaces in there so it's a little more readable. So let's go ahead and change these
Mm,
queries. Let's just call it yeah, we can just change the %20s to just be spaces. And the %2c is just a comma. So we can just add a comma and then a space. Yep. So this just makes it a little more readable for us inside of Postman. We don't have to put the %20 in there. Postman's going to take care of that for us. Now, if we hit that send button, what we see in the response here down at the bottom is all of the raw HTML. So
Mm,
this is the raw HTML that comes back from Indeed, and this is the HTML that we're going to scrape. If we click on the preview tab that you see here at the bottom, now this isn't going to go load all of their fancy CSS and images, but if we scroll down a little bit, we're going to see kind of a rough estimation of what this page looked like over at Indeed. And so we know that this HTML is coming in, and we've got some interesting information that we could grab from here. We could maybe grab our job titles. We could maybe grab that salary range. A lot of them are
mhm.
going to be estimated, but we might be able to go grab that salary. We might be able to grab the location. And so let's go dig into this HTML a little bit and see how we can scrape this data out of this response. So we actually don't need this web page anymore.
Oh,
We
okay.
can do everything inside of Postman at this point. So
All
if we
right.
go back to the pretty view, this is going to allow us to actually view that HTML.
Mm,
And from here, I'm going to turn it over to you. And what we're going to do is we're mostly going to go back and forth between this pretty view here as well as the test tab in order to write code that scrapes this HTML to go find what we're looking for. And we can just pull this up in the Postman console for now until we're ready to work on a visualizer.
okay.
And so now we can actually try to pick this apart a little bit. What would your process be for writing a scraper? Like, what is a web scraper to you?
Well, we want to look at different um job postings in this case. And so we need to look at where those job postings are, what identifies each of those things. So, um, is there a way to identify where the title is created and um, the salary range, the location? So first of all, I think trying to identify what those how they are identified in the HTML can get
Mhm.
us to a point where we can say, all right, now we're going to take a look at all of these things and we're going to try and pull those out.
Okay. So let's go back to the preview tab here so that we see like more of a rendered version of this. Let's scroll down a little bit. Let's go see if we can find one of those job titles. So entry level quality analyst. Yeah. So let's go back to the pretty view. And what we want to do is we want to search for those words, entry level quality analyst. So, yep, we can use the search right here. So we're just going to search for those words. So entry level quality analyst.
There we go.
So this looks like it found some JavaScript, but it found eight. It found actually eight hits on this page. So we don't really want to scrape raw JavaScript. We want to go scrape the HTML. So let's hit the down arrow next to the search results, and that's going to go find the next one. Now we found a span title. So this looks a little bit closer to the container that we need to go look at. Now, the downside to writing a web scraper, and this is why we like people to use APIs and to build APIs, is if Indeed ever came in and they changed the format of the page, our web scraper breaks. And so all the work that we're going to do today could potentially break tomorrow if Indeed decides to change how they're laying out their page. And this is why we love API data instead, because those are less prone to breaking like that. But it looks like we may have found a little bit of information about what we can go scrape from here. So we know that we can go grab something like span with a title to go find some information, but maybe we need to look a little bit above that to try to
Yeah.
find, what's the bigger container from here. So now we can see this stuff is wrapping around the page quite a lot. And there's no easy way to really do that other than turn that off. And then you can scroll at the bottom. So that might actually be a better kind of thing.
Mm.
So what we can do here is now that we found that containers, we can scroll up and maybe scroll to the left a little bit because we want to find that higher level container that has all of this stuff in it. So how would you from here, how would you determine where those common blocks are for each of those jobs?
Um, well, I think all right, so we see where the location is. We see the name of the company and the title here. Um, let's see. So we need to definitely go just keep going up. We have result content. So I wonder, how far down that we've got this whole table here. So kind of tracing down where this information is. So it looks like each of these job titles, wait, is that the title? No, it's got one above there, is in this class of job title color purple, I would guess.
So that one, that's maybe where we can scrape the title. But if we want to grab the title and the location and the salary, we're probably going to need a next level container where we can grab just that. So we might need something similar to this
Well,
TD cell of result content,
yeah.
or maybe the table itself. This table itself is going to be where all of these jobs are listed. No, it looks like everything is in its own table, so that may not also help us.
Yeah, interesting. So what
Yep.
is above the table then?
Above that table, looks like we've got a div class of job scene, slider item, slider container. So this is where things get a little tricky with web scraping, where we have to identify what it is that we're trying to find here. So one thing that we could probably start with is just these tables. We know that there's a bunch of stuff. We know there's a bunch of tables in here. So let's go over to our test tab. Well, we're already on that test tab. So let's pull this part down. And after line 6, what we can do in here is we can tell Cheerio, like, hey, just go get a list of all the tables. Um, what would your
Mm.
process be from here to go figure out how Cheerio can go find all of the tables on a page?
I would go to the Cheerio documentation
Okay.
and see what is going on over there. So let's see here. Um, Cheerio options, accepted elements. Well, let me just take a little browse over here and see if there are
This
some.
looks this looks pretty good right here. So we've loaded in that HTML already. And then it looks like we have
Mhm.
this $.html. That's going to give us all of the HTML from there. So let's scroll down just a little bit more.
Here we go. Load will introduce HTML head and body elements that are not already present.
So it looks like we can use this $ parentheses and then give it a HTML tag of some kind, and that's going to return some amount of data for us. So it looks
Yeah,
like we might be able to use $parentheses and then in quotes, we can just put the word table.
table. Hmm.
And let's console log that and let's see what kind of information we get from
Okay, so here we go. $ parentheses. That's not a $.
there. Yeah,
And
and so
then
Kevin on LinkedIn said you can inspect the Indeed job list to see what's the common component for all that data. That's exactly what we're trying to narrow down here. Like, what are these common components? So that we can actually go in and try to extract that using the Cheerio library.
okay, in quotes.
Yep. So that'll be in quotes, and let's save that as a variable, and then let's console log that variable and see what happens. So at the bottom left corner of the Postman interface, you'll see a console link. It's hidden by your label
Oh, okay.
right now on Restream, but down the bottom left corner of Postman, you'll see a link that says console.
Oh,
So
wait
we'll
a
pull
minute.
that up. Yeah, so we'll pull that up in a moment. We have to console log table, and then we're actually going to have to send this request again. So this code only executes once we send a request and we get a response. And this test code then is going to run on the response. So it looks like we got some kind of array down here at the bottom. So we got a lot of tables in here. Let's go through and let's just see how many tables we got. So let's scroll down to the bottom here in our console. Just curious how many we found. So we found 32 different tables on the page. So that seems like a pretty good start. Let's go inspect into these tables, and then maybe we can narrow this down a little bit more when we find some common elements. Maybe we can add some filtering to what we're doing uh, in Cheerio to filter this out a little more. It
Okay.
looks like
So
this one has a, yep. So we're gonna probably have to go through the children. So the table is gonna have children like the table body, and that's gonna have all the table rows. And those are gonna have the table cells.
there we go.
Um,
Hmm.
yep. So let's go look at the children of the row. That should be the table cell. Let's go open up that children. Let's see what's inside of there. So this is where we've got that span tag. So let's go look at let's look at the attributes for this span tag. Nope, that looks like just an icon of some kind. So this may not be a table that we need, or at least not that cell. Let's go down to the next table cell from here. So this is how we can go scrape this data and then start looking through it using our console log. So
Okay,
let's
so
look at
this is all the
children.
way at the bottom. Let's maybe, do you think it makes sense to look at one up
Well,
higher
let's
in the list?
um oh yeah, maybe if this is down at the bottom. Yeah, let's go look at one close to the top
Well, maybe let's go with 4.
or midway. Sure. So let's look at children, and that's going to be our table body. Let's go look at that children. And so this looks like it's going to have 2 different rows in here. So we can go look at those children and see what we have available inside of here. So inside of here, we got that span tag. Let's go look at the, yep, see what's in here. So that's
Okay,
an easily apply button. Okay. So it feels like we're getting warmer.
little more promising.
Yeah. So let's go look at the next table row. So it looks like we had 2 different rows in here. And Kumar was asking in chat, what are we working through today? So this session, we're looking at how to scrape data in Postman. And so what we're doing is we're just pulling up some website data from Indeed.com, and we're going to try to extract some information and then maybe put it into a simple visualizer. So we're looking at the Cheerio library that is built into Postman and seeing how we can look through that data today and actually kind of look at Becca's process for how we're going to go find the bits of information that we want to extract from that webpage.
Okay, so it looks like we've got some urgently hiring icons.
Okay.
Let's see. Okay, so this is what we're looking at. Easily apply, urgent hiring. And
And we
so
kind
this
of want
is,
stuff that's above that. So I
yeah.
wonder if there's something more than just the tables, or maybe we need to look at the table right above this table. Um,
Oh, I wonder,
so
yeah, nested
because
table.
there might be multiple tables. So this is where things get a little sticky when we're dealing with web scrapings. How do we locate the exact data that we're looking for here? So let's see if there's like another level of table. And this might help us identify, like, is there another div container or something that we can go scrape instead to then get each of those jobs. Uh, so there's a table row that has some children in it, or it has one child in there. And this is kind of the time consuming process of building a scraper. Let's expand that children one here.
Children 1. Oh, there we go. Okay, result content. That looks good. Oh, there we go. We got some headings. Let's keep going. H2. All right. Job title. Woo.
All right, so we found a job title. So that's promising. So it looks like there might be multiple tables for each job post. So I think just finding our tables probably isn't granular enough, or it might be too granular. I think we need to find something that's holding onto those tables, so then we can narrow this down. So we can get like an array of just the jobs, and then inside of there we can go look at these tables or go look at these other attributes to go get those job titles and salaries.
Yeah. Okay, so this is how deep did we go here? All right, so we have the
So
T.
bald bearded builder dropped by chat and says, "I don't see any blindfolds. I was lied to."
You can be on next time and we will give you a blindfold and
Yep, for
watch you
sure.
do it. It'll be great.
Yep, good to have you in the Twitch chat today. Appreciate you dropping by. Good to see X90 as well.
Okay, so We looked at the
So I think
tables.
we might need to go find something other than a table. So in our test code, we were telling Cheerio to go break everything down at a table level. We might need to
Mhm,
go one level higher than that. Instead of looking for tables, we maybe need to go find a div tag that contains that table or something. This might be a little bit easier done inside the Chrome Inspector tool or something like that. So we can let's command or control click on the word entry level quality analyst, and let's go
control.
look at just that element. And we'll definitely need you to bump your
Ooh,
font
yeah.
up on on this one for us.
Boop.
Um, so this is showing us. Um, so now we can kind of come up. We see that table above that. Above that, we see a job scene beacon. And then above that, it looks like we've got these slider items. Let's go up one more from that. So as you hover over those divs, you can
Okay.
actually see it's actually highlighting that whole box for us in Chrome. So it looks like that div class slider container might actually be the type of container that we're looking for that whole job. Um, because it looks like the div just above that that says Mosaic provider job cards. It looks like that might be a list of all of the job cards.
Mm,
Yeah, so we need
mhm.
to go down one step from there. So it looks like that next div tab or tag, that's that
This
div
one.
looks to be holding our whole job. So I think that this is what we need to go look for. But we can see here that if we just search by div, we're going to get a ton of results. And so
Mhm.
we also want to take a look at maybe this slider container CSS property. And let's go see if we can tell Cheerio how to go find divs that have a specific CSS property.
Let's see. Um, let's see. Value of a style property for the first element. Mm, no, that's what we want. Let's see what else we have.
So if we
Okay.
scroll back up actually to the example that it had, it looked like it was looking for an unordered list with a specific ID. Um, oh no, sorry,
Okay.
that was just actually loading the. It was actually loading the HTML itself. Um,
Um,
so we may want to look
right.
for. Let's see, what can we look for in
Loading.
here? So there are a number of filter options that we can look at. So there's a contains, there's a select. There might be some tooling in there that we can take a look
Oh, okay. I see.
at.
Select.
No, that looks like it's just looking at the HTML element itself. So in this case, we might
Mhm.
actually need to do this at more of a JavaScript level instead of at a library level. Let's take a look through a few more things here and see if we can narrow this down a little bit more. Got a comment in chat from X90 says Postman does much more than I expected. Yeah, someone else mentioned every time I look at Postman, I feel like I'm watching a magician behind the curtain. Yep, fantastic. So Postman does so much more than just call an API and look at some JSON responses. We've got all these JavaScript libraries built into the Postman sandbox environment that we can go and do some really interesting things here. So we have all these accessors. Looks like we have access to attributes and so on. Um, we could probably just do this in JavaScript as we iterate over those divs. We could probably say whether that div has a specific kind of attribute. Um,
Yeah. So, okay.
so we probably want to find all the divs, but then we're going to need to find a way in JavaScript to filter that where that class is called like slider container. Now, just to be sure that that's what we're looking for, let's go back to Chrome for a moment. Let's collapse this div tag And let's see if there's another one underneath it. So the next one is another section, and that's
Mm,
not what we want. So let's collapse that. Well, it looks like that section is collapsed. Um, what I'm curious about is like, what's the next
interesting.
one called? Where we
Yeah.
have like the data technician. Um, like, does that have the same? So that also has a div class of slider container. So I'm pretty sure that that slider
Okay.
container is the
Hmm.
attribute that we're looking for here. So maybe there's a way using Cheerio. Can we just go find everything that has that CSS property of slider container?
Wait, I'm gonna Google it here.
Yep, no problem. It's all part of
Um,
our challenge of like seeing someone else's
CSS.
process and how you work this stuff out.
Okay.
Now, unfortunately, we don't have access to npm to install other elements or other libraries. We are going to have to use what's built into Cheerio.
Okay, that is old, so we might not find that useful. Let's see. Yeah. So select tags of an HTML document. CSS selector. No, that looks different. Okay. Within the context scope, which searches are selector and context can be string expression.
So one
Okay.
hint I can give you, when we told Cheerio to go get all of our tables, we gave it the name of an HTML tag.
Okay.
What if we tried giving that a CSS selector instead?
Okay.
So where we have
Yes.
table in there, what if we gave it that CSS selector that we were looking for?
All right. So we would need to.
So
All
let's
right.
change
Give it a
table to be
CSS
that
select.
CSS thing that we were looking for. I forget what
Do
it's
we
called
need to
already. It was
change? Yeah, I've got the thing here. But we.
selector or something.
So then it would it be.
Yeah, let's just look for just slider container because I don't know that those other CSS properties are going to be duplicated across the other ones. So we can start with this. Um, let's just send this over. Let's see how many things we get back when we look for just this slider container. So let's
Okay.
scroll down in here and we'll expand that list of options. Oh, did that only find one thing on the whole page?
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, so I'm wondering if there's there's the syntax here is wrong.
we need to put a dot in front of it because it's a
Yeah,
CSS selector.
there we go.
The other thing you can do in the console is there's a clear button in the top left or top right corner of the console. You can click that and that'll clear out the within the console
Oh,
pane itself down at the bottom.
nice.
That'll just clear out the old content. Cool. So it looks like we got an array of something back here, and we got 14 things. That's better than 32.
Mm-hmm.
So now it looks like we've got a div tag, and if we go
There
look
we
at the
go.
children inside of here, we've got another div tag. That that's going to have another div tag. But I think though that we found those higher level containers now where we can drill down into each of these
Got the
and do something
table.
interesting from here. So now with inside of this, we could go extract just the tables. And from there, we could extract maybe that job title or go find that salary information or something.
Wow.
So there's a lot of stuff that we might need to dive through. And so this is where we might need to go back and forth between the Chrome Inspect tool and what we're looking for in Postman. But it
Hey,
looks now
there
that,
it is.
hey, there it is. All right. So what we can do here is we can go say, hey, based on this container, now go find the span container, and maybe that'll give us the text of our job title. So let's go back to our test tab.
Okay.
So now table is going to be an array of all of our jobs. So let's call this something like jobs or something like that instead of table. And since it's an array, yeah, we'll pluralize it and we'll do the same. So let's maybe keep that console log going. It might be helpful to kind of log what we're finding as we go.
Okay.
So now within that job, or within the array of jobs, um, how would we iterate over that to then go find all of our span tags?
Okay, so we could probably map over it and look for the span tags, right?
Yep. But we're gonna have to figure out, like, once we iterate over it, we'll have each of those sort of inner blocks, and then how do we search inside of that for spans? So, um, so from
Yeah.
here, we'll have to do some kind of iteration. So after line 9, how would you start to iterate over this list of jobs?
Okay, so after, all right, let's take a look at what the data looks like here. We've got,
It's like an array of objects.
yeah, we have an array of objects. So we would look at each of those objects, and then within those objects, look for the span tag, right?
Something like that. Yeah. So let's start just by iterating over that list. And then from there, we'll take a look at how do we tell Cheerio, like, hey, take this inner object and go find something else inside of that? Like, is there a way that we can continue to filter?
Right. Okay, I see. All right. So, um, let's see. Can we? All right, we'll do jobs dot. Can we do that in there? Is that fine?
Yep. We should be able to do a map. Yep.
Okay. Job, and then maybe console log jobs. Can we do that
Yep.
just to see what we've got going? And then actually, I'm going to remove that.
All right. Well, it looks like we got an ID value for each of those jobs. So that that value that we got back from our map. So the actual object that we got back as jobs on line 8 is actually an object where it had an attribute of 0 set to another object. So in this case, what we want to console log instead of console log job is we actually want to console jobs dot job or jobs square bracket job, to actually look into the jobs object
No.
using this job. Now, dot job
Oh,
isn't an attribute. We'll have to use the square bracket notation.
yep. Sorry.
I like that JavaScript gives us the choice between the dot notation and the square bracket notation. All right, so now we've got each of our individual objects.
Okay.
So now inside of that block of code, it looks like we can narrow down through the children and so on. Like, how do we find the span tag out of that?
Okay.
So there are a couple of ways that we might want to do this with a scraper. Is we might One way we could do it would be to turn this object back in HTML, load that HTML back in, and say go find all the span tags. But there might be a way in Cheerio to say, if I've already got a result, how do I then go research inside that result for other things?
Hmm.
So let's go look through the Cheerio documentation and see if we can find a way of you know iterating over what we found to go continue to filter things.
Okay. Oh wait, I'm gonna go back. All right, so we are trying to look for, we need to grab that span tag, right?
Mhm.
Mm, mm, mm. And do we know what that's called?
Um, well, let's just go find all the span tags for now because it looks like it had like a class or an ID or something which contained the actual job title itself. So we're not going to be able to give it anything more specific than just span tag, I think, right now, if that is the only span tag within that object. So we need to go figure out, now that we've narrowed that down, how can we continue to search um, for what we're looking for inside of that object? Is there a way to continue to search, like from inside of there? How do we get the span tags?
Okay. So let's see here. we've got maybe we can try and filter. That doesn't look like what I want. So let's go up a little bit.
Let's go back to the homepage of Cheerio and let's see if there's
Oh,
any.
am I not? I keep thinking I'm on the homepage.
So if we scroll down a little bit more, there was a spot where it looked like it was looking for multiple things. So right in the middle of the page, right here, it looks like we can find things based on some more context. So it looks like we can give it a
Okay.
comma limited list of things that we want to search for here. So
Okay.
we might have to do this like step by step, like go find all the span tags and then go find all of the, other things or something. But I wonder if there's a way that we can continue to use this $ notation, say like go find all of the, that CSS property and then a comma and then span or something like that. If that'll go find all the span tags within that property and give us a list of all those span tags. Now we
Okay.
might need
Yeah.
a way to like reconcile that later on, but that might be one thing
Okay.
that we could do. Um,
Uh,
or since we have this job object, could we continue to use that in some way to actually say like within that go find the span tags? But let's start with just jobs job, within slider container on line 8. Let's add a comma after
yeah.
that closing quote and let's look for span. And that'll also need to be in quotes. And I wonder
Okay.
if this will give us just the span tags within those slider containers.
So maybe let's do a console log here. Oops. And then comment this out.
Yeah, we can just comment that for now.
Nope. Sorry.
And so one shortcut in Postman, if you're just anywhere on the line, you can just hit // and it'll add the comment. You don't have to highlight the line first.
Okay.
All right, so that doesn't quite look like we found anything here. It looks like that came
Yeah.
back with nothing. So that didn't work out the way I'd hoped. Okay. So at least we're finding things what not to do.
Yeah.
So we might have to go look a little bit deeper into the Cheerio library to figure out a little bit more. How do we dive a little deeper now that we found this first selector? How do we continue to search through that to find things?
What do you think about trying table?
Instead of span?
Yeah.
Yeah, we could try it. Sure. Let's just see if that. Oh, hey, we got an array of things. So let's see how many of these we got. How many tables did we get in here?
14.
We found 14 tables that were inside of those search results. So if we presume that we got like 10 things on the page, then probably 10 of these 14 things are actually our jobs. So that's starting to be a little more helpful here.
Table. Huh. Yeah. Click through up result content. There's the H2. Oh, so I wonder how far down you can. There's the span tag.
Yeah. So I wonder, do we have to know everything in between? Like it was that container, and then it's a table tag, and then it's an H2 or a T body, and then a T row, and then a T cell, and then an H2, and then a span. Like, do we have to know all of those things? One shortcut we might be able to do in here is once we have that initial job, we can turn that back into HTML and then do another search similar to what we did on line 6. We could say, go render the HTML for that block. Go get that as a new like $ variable, and within that variable, go search for span tags.
Oh,
so that might be one way that we can do that. So let's uncomment line 10, And let's actually build a little block of code here instead of just that console log. You have to
Okay.
click outside of the highlighted part and then click back in.
Thanks. I
Yeah,
keep doing that.
it's something
Um,
I would love to see changed in Postman. So where you've got the console log here, let's start a block of code in there instead of the console log.
um, oh,
So we'll just do like an open curly brace.
yeah,
Yeah,
nope.
there we go. So let's hit enter and we'll have like a block of code inside of here.
Okay.
Someone was asking in chat, what should we assert during this test? We're not really asserting anything in this test at this point. What we're basically doing here is we're just scraping. So the first assertion that we're looking at is, did we get a successful response? In this case, we're not actually writing a test that we got specific data. We're just using this test tab to actually execute some JavaScript on the response that we got back. So we don't have to write assertions. In this case, as long as this function returns true at the end, it'll say that the test passed inside of Postman. But we don't have to actually put an assertion or expectation in here. We can just have it execute this code. So one thing I think that we can do here, now that we have that job identifier, that's going to be like that number that we saw before. What we can do here is we can do something like jobs square bracket job dot HTML and then two parentheses. That's going to turn just that block back into HTML code. So what I think we can do is something similar to line 6, where let's make another constant variable in here, and we'll just call this, we'll call it like job HTML or something like that.
Should I just
Yeah, do it at the beginning of that line, I think. Yep. So we'll call it like job HTML equals that. But what we can do here is if we scroll up just a little bit so we can see line 6, is we can actually do cheerio.load around this jobs job HTML call. So let's do cheerio.load and
okay,
then
does that
put,
go in?
uh-huh.
Oh,
So
I see.
what we're gonna do here is we're gonna say like, hey, go take that job object, go turn that back into HTML, and then we're gonna load that as a new Cheerio object.
Okay.
And then from here, I wonder if we can say job HTML or do the uh,
Console log.
console log. Now, instead of the $sign, we're going to use
Oh
job
wait.
HTML. So before we made a variable called $sign. That's why we had access to $sign. So this is going to be job HTML. And then in parentheses, we're going to look for a span tag. So open a parenthesis, and then in quotes, we're going to look for a span tag here.
Okay.
Now it looks like
We
we
got
did the
14.
initial. Well, we did the initial. That might be the console log from line 9.
Oh, yep.
So did we actually find any job HTML from here? That would be an interesting question. It looks like we're not. It looks like we're not printing those. Oh, interesting. So something happened in here. So this is another downside to uh, doing this kind of scripting work in Postman. If there's an error in the JavaScript, we don't know why. We just don't see any console logging either. So there might be an error on line 10. Like maybe line 10 doesn't execute the way that we thought it would.
Yeah,
Let's try
right.
console logging jobs job.html. Let's console just that, and then let's see if that actually renders that back into HTML like we thought. We're gonna have to do that before line 10 though, because I think the
I was just gonna comment for
cheerio.load,
that. Yeah.
if that's failing, then it's not going to execute anything after that. So one nice thing about Postman is wherever your JavaScript fails, it doesn't execute anything below that. So let's do jobs job.html. Let's see if this actually turns that back into HTML text for us. And that's a function, yeah. Let's see if we get anything back from that. Oh, we don't get anything from that either. Interesting. So it looks like getting that object, we have no way of turning that back into HTML. Interesting. Okay. So we're definitely going to have to dive in a little bit more on their documentation to find out what's going to be possible here. Um,
Okay. All right.
so how do we turn? So we have that object. How do we turn that object back into HTML? Um, when we use load, we give it a string, or we can give it a node. I wonder if we can do that without the .html and just tell it to load that node.
Okay. So
So I'm looking at the load code. So if you go to
oh, I see it.
click on load. So when we look at the description here at the top, it says load, and the content is either a string or a node or an array of nodes or a buffer. So I'm wondering if we can give it that node object that we've already extracted that node. Can we give it that and load that in some way?
Okay.
Um, so let's try that in our maybe zoom in on this a little bit so other folks could see that too.
Okay.
Um,
So
let's try Cheerio.load again on line 11, but let's take off the .html. Let's see if we can load just that object. And then let's uncomment line 12 and see if we get anything back in there.
oh no.
Oops. Command Shift T. We'll Cool. Let's go back to the test tab, and all of our work should still be there. So the nice thing about Postman is it auto saves in your local storage.
That is really nice.
Yeah. So let's comment line 10 and uncomment 12, and let's run this, and let's see now if we can scrape into that object. So still not able to grab
Nothing.
that.
Mm-mm.
Okay.
Oh wait, no, it didn't save it. Let's try this
Oh
again.
yeah. Right. So let's take off the whole HTML part. Let's take off the HTML
Oh,
part.
yep. Okay.
Hey, we got
There
data.
we go.
All right. So it looks like we can just give it that node. And now inside of that, let's go look for that span tag inside of here. It looks like the very first thing that we got
Yeah.
was actually a span tag. But let's go
Yeah.
back to our code and let's now search for just span tags. Oh, we are searching for span tags. So that found all of the span tags within that job HTML. So if we go back to your console log results here, you started expanding that first one. Can we collapse the 0? So it looks like each of these job nodes has 11 span tags. So we're a lot closer now to how we narrow down, like how do we get into that next thing that we're looking for. So
Yeah.
now that we have that whole job node that has the title, we can go find the salary, we can go find the location just now by finding those other elements. And now we can maybe narrow down a little bit more, like which of those span tags is actually the job title.
Yeah, so it
Um,
looks like that first one here, that's the job title. The next one is
Something else. Okay.
the company.
So if we know that 0 is the job title, let's go grab that, and we're going to save that just as a job title to start out with.
Okay.
So in our test code, we know that the first result that came back from that is going to be our job title. So let's go make a variable out of that, and we're just going to call that job
title.
HTML span and then square bracket 0.
Okay, wait a minute.
All right,
So this
job
is the job
HTML. You'll need
title.
to give it. Yep. And then we'll do job HTML and then parentheses quote span, and then element 0 should then give us the 0th attribute, or the attribute called 0. And that should now be our job title span tag, at least. Now from here, we can actually go figure out, well, how do we actually get the text out of that? So how do we extract the text from there? If we go expand that span tag a little bit, so let's go back up to 0,
Mm-hmm.
or go to the 0 one at the top there. It looks like we have attributes.
Oh, attributes.
Then we have the title from there. So it looks like we have a title attribute that will actually give us, or there's also the data attribute that we can grab from here. So if we do dot data on the end of
ATTR.
line 13, maybe that'll give us that data attribute for our job title. Let's try console logging just job title here. We'll send that over. Let's see if that gives us what we're looking for. Oh, we got undefined. All right. So that didn't quite find what we're looking for.
Wait, we haven't. Let me just see what this looks like. So
So that's the individual job. But when we're console logging the titles are coming back as undefined. So doing dot data or doing dot data on the end of line 13 wasn't the attribute.
right.
So we're gonna have to try to figure out like how else could we grab the data from here. So it looks like we have the attributes where we have an attribute called title.
Hmm.
We could maybe do like dot attribs dot title. Hey, look at that. We got our job titles. So now we know how to go grab our job title.
Hmm.
So our scraper's starting to succeed at this point. Now we would figure out, okay, well, how do we go grab our salary? How do we go grab the location? And that would just be like, is it another span tag? Is there a CSS selector that we can look for to go get the salary? Things like that might give us a bit more hint. So let's go back over to our Chrome inspect tool. So now that we've found that bigger job within that slider container, how do we find the actual so that's the salary. So that looks like something coming in a div that has an attribute of salary only, or there's a salary snippet container. Um,
Yeah.
let's see. Oh, and then it's got an SVG, which we can ignore. So it looks like we want to go find the salary snippet container as a CSS attribute. And then inside of that is another div tag. And inside of that is the text that we want to go get our salary.
Okay, so we want
Salary snippet container, I think is what we're going to kind of filter on here.
okay.
So similar to what we did where we had the job HTML span, now I think we could look for job HTML with that CSS selected.
Mm.
Let's
Job
do, so
HTML.
we'll make a new, so we'll make a new variable for this as well. But we'll search for quote dot and then paste in that selector. And yeah, let's go console log that. And then we might need to go find the div tag inside of that. So maybe after that closing quote, let's add comma and then a div tag after that, because we know that the salary actually exists inside a div tag inside of this salary snippet container. The other thing, over on the very right edge, you'll see a little pointer to the right, right over on the very right edge. Yeah, click on that right arrow, and that'll collapse the snippets.
Oh, okay.
We can also drag the where we see the request and the collection over on the right side, um, right to the left of where you see the line numbers in your sandbox here, is you can actually go a little bit more to the left, not that far, just right there. Now you can drag that all the way to the left, and that'll collapse that whole side as well. So now all we'll see is
Oh, there we go.
those will give us
Nice.
a little more room to see what's going on.
Thanks.
All right, so let's so we're consoling logging the salary here. Did we actually run that? All right, so we've got additional data now that we can go peek into, and let's go see if we can find some salary data. It
Interesting.
looks like we're maybe console logging some other stuff too. So
Yeah,
we might need to shut off some of the console logs.
where did it go? Here we go. Mm-mm.
So we're console logging the salary. Let's scroll up a little bit. That's the only console log we have. Okay, so we're finding a lot of divs inside of that salary snippet. Um, okay, so we found the salary with our options. So now it looks like we've got these single objects, but it looks like sometimes we're getting an array and sometimes we're getting a single object.
Uh,
So this has a div within a div, which has more children. That one has
that's
the SVG, so I
SVG.
think that's the one that we want. So we want a div inside a div. So we might need to add another layer of div to get what we're looking for. And then inside of that, we're looking for, we don't want to unpack the SVG. We want to unpack the next child that we see.
I'm not seeing any salaries.
So we don't want the SVG. So collapse 0 here at the
Oh,
top
I
of
see.
the panel. We want number 1. So there were two
Ah,
things in there.
I
One
see.
was a graphic, and then the other one was the actual text that we're looking for.
Okay.
So I think what we want to look for here is we want the container and then the div and then another div, because it looks like our salary is kind of buried inside 2 div tags, not 1.
What is this?
So this was something else where we found that container plus 1 div.
Oh, so we want the
So
double dip.
I think we want a double div here.
Can you?
We're gonna double dip our double div here. All right. So now if we know that inside of here we have children, so inside of this block we have a children attribute.
Oh, wait. This is not the one we want.
Oh, did we lose it? Is the double div not giving us what we want?
No, this is giving us the other thing.
Interesting. Okay, so the double div did not work. So let's walk back on a div here. So we got a couple minutes left here. I'd love to find a way of like just extracting that salary here. I'm kind of curious what we're going to do.
Okay, wait.
So we have
rerun this.
So let's dive in. So we know that it has to have this 0 attribute in order to find what we're looking for.
Yes.
So as long as we get an object back that has a 0, we know that inside of that 0 object, we have children. Inside of that, we have children. But that's also a div tag. So I'm curious why the div didn't find what we were looking for. And then we know inside of that child 1 is the thing that we need. So what we can do here is, let's go back to the Postman code. We know that what we're looking for here is something where salary contains a 0 attribute, or an attribute called 0. So we can do a check here that says, like we can look at object.keys of this object that comes back. And what we can do here is we can do something like if our object keys does not contain 0, then we just skip it. We like move on to the next thing. So that's going to give us a list of all of our things. And so we're looking for something that has that 0. So we can do a line of code here that says like if, and because we're in a map, right? So we should be able to do a return. So what we can do is we can say if not object.keys, and then we need to give it salary, and then dot includes after the parentheses. And I think here we want to say it does not include 0. So if our salary object does not include an attribute of 0, then we can do a return. and that'll skip that, and it'll only then we should only console log what the ones that did. So all of that's going to have to be in parentheses. That if statement has to be in parentheses. So we can just do a return inside this block. That should just move on to the next thing that we're mapping over. If I remember
Okay.
right about JavaScript. My JavaScript is a little rusty sometimes. But let's try and run this now. And now we should only see our console log where we do have the 0 element.
Okay. So that console log needs to be in there though, right?
Nope. No, we'll leave it here.
Okay.
We'll leave it here because we want to console log the things that we don't skip. Okay, so something in there didn't work out. So if our salary object, so when we looked at object.keys for salary, maybe the 0 is a string. Let's put the 0 inside quotes, maybe. There we go. All right, cool. So now we've found just the things that had a 0 element in there. So now we know that once we get past line 20, whatever salary object we're looking at has all of the other things that we need.
Okay.
From here, we could probably go do like another level of Cheerio loading like we did to get at the job title and so on. So I think we'll start to wrap up here.
Okay.
But this is how we can use the Cheerio library to basically drill down into our content and extract the things that we need. What would be interesting to do from here, just from a theoretical point of view, if we were to go build a visualizer with this, the visualizer uses a handlebar template and a JavaScript data structure of some kind. So what we could do inside of this code is we can say, once we go scrape all of these data points of our job titles and our salaries and so on, and maybe a link to the job post, then we could put that into a JavaScript data structure, pass that into a handlebars template to render out our own sort of visualizer of what we want this content to look like. So if we close the console here, you might need to shrink the font a little bit to see an X over on the right side
Oh.
to close up the console. Yeah. So the little X over on the top right. Yep. So when we pull up the bottom part here a little bit where we see like the body and the tests and so on, pull that up just a little bit. When we click on body and we go to preview, this is showing us a preview of what actually came back from, in this case, Indeed.com. If we go to the visualize tab, that's where we would actually see any visualizer that we build based on our test script running. And so what I'll do is let me drop a link for our visualizer. Find that real quick. I'm going to drop that link in chat, and I'll drop it over on LinkedIn as well. So what we can do from here then is we can go build a visualizer using that data. So as we extract all that data with our scraper, we can put it into a data structure, pass that data structure into a visualizer, and now when we click on the visualize, we can see how we want to represent that data, where it's like just the job title, the salary, maybe the location, and then a link to the post. What would be interesting then is when we're in that test tab, there's a snippet in there that you can use to actually go make another request. And it doesn't have to go back to Indeed.com. You can give it any other URL. And so the handy thing with that then is we could give it a URL of some other job site saying, okay, well, now that we went and we grabbed all of Indeed's data, let's go grab the same query parameters and whatever from Monster or Dice or like any of these other sites. Go scrape through that data. If that response came back okay, go scrape that data, add that to our visualizer as well. So now our visualizer is all of this data mashed together.
That's awesome.
So that would be a pretty cool project for anybody at Virtual Coffee.
Yes.
It would be a really interesting way within Postman to go scrape a number of sites, put it all into a single visualizer, and then all you're doing is you're hitting a send button one time. You go over to that visualize tab, and now you've got a list of all those jobs.
Yeah.
There might be other like query parameters that you can put in there where you could sort by location or sort by salary or sort by title, and then you're going to get that data in that order. So it's really about how do we learn how to use that Cheerio library to grab an object, reload it into Cheerio to search for something else, reload that into Cheerio to search for something else, in order to extract all the little bits of information that we want, so that we can drill down to exactly what we need, and then take just that data and visualize it how we want to see that data. So we don't have to see all the other stuff on the page. This can also be really helpful. Not that I'm encouraging like getting around ad blockers, but if there's a way that you want to visualize some data without seeing all of the other stuff on the page, you could do something similar in Postman, where you go just grab a page and you figure out which part of that content do I actually want to see, and go build your own visualizer in there. So go check out that visualize link. It'll show you how to build a handlebars template, and you can do some really interesting things. I've done things with like cool charting libraries. Um, Carson and Sean did a live stream a number of weeks ago where they were pulling out Sean's Strava workout data and building a
That's
little
cool.
like green checkbox thing similar to like a GitHub commit history, where we were seeing kind of the intensity of Sean's workouts from Strava. So you can do some really interesting things inside the visualization here. And the visualization can actually go load external JavaScript libraries as well to then do some really interesting things. So you can get into like Chart.js or D3, where you can pull up like full like geographic maps and like do hotspot or heat map kinds of things actually on maps based on your data. There's some really interesting stuff that you could do.
It's really
What if
cool.
we went and said like go find all the entry level JavaScript jobs across the country and put it on a heat map so we can see maybe geographically where those jobs are. So there's a lot of really powerful stuff that you can do inside the visualizer. We've just done a couple of other live streams around the visualizer, so I didn't want to go down that road today. But what I did want to show is kind of the power of this Cheerio library, that we can go in and kind of start to scrape out this data and find just the little bits and elements that we're looking for. And then what can we do with that data? Lots of opportunity there to tinker and play around a little bit.
Yeah, this
Cool.
is
Well,
very cool.
as we wrap up, Becca, again, really appreciate your time today. We do want to close with what we call our community shoutouts. And so, Becca, I'll turn it over to you. Shout out any community, any kind of stuff going on. How can people find you and connect with you online, hear more about Virtual Coffee? Tell us a little bit more about what you've got going.
Yeah, sure. So you can find me pretty much everywhere at Becca HW, like it is on screen. Twitter is where I am spending most of my time these days. Check out virtualcoffee.io. We've got resources and stuff on there. We're launching a new monthly challenge that's actually job application materials. So this is like very pertinent to what we're going to be doing tomorrow, I think is April 1st. So we'll be starting that. I think we're going to do a Twitter space around that. So if you can't join us, don't worry about it. Just follow us on Twitter. We're Virtual Coffee IO. Deepgram is doing a hackathon right now with Dev2. We have actually a Twitch stream tomorrow at 1:30 p.m. Eastern. Our goal really is to support everybody that is interested in submitting. So you don't have to build something. You can write a blog post, but the idea is just to continue to create great communities everywhere. And so hopefully we'll continue to do that in a bunch of different ways.
Awesome. Cool. Well, thanks again, Becca. I'm going to drop two shout outs here. One is for our community forum. I'll drop those links in chat. We have a huge community forum. Tons and tons of people on there want to help out and answer questions. If you've got additional questions about Postman, I also hang out in that community as well, answering questions. So if you've got questions on the visualizer, on scrapers, anything along those lines, I'm happy to answer those questions for you there as well. And the last link I'm going to drop in here is for what we call our Space Camp, which is a bunch of, right now they're live webinars that we're going to be teaching. We've got one coming up in April around Open API, and then we've got one scheduled in May and June where we're going to be taking an Open API spec and actually show you how to go build an API from scratch, do testing, how to do monitoring, and deploying it as well. So I'm going to be teaching the one in May about building and testing that API. And so go register. They're totally free. Eventually, we do want to run them as in-person events, but right now they're totally free to attend online. So you can go register for those at those links. Looks like Becca also dropped a link for the DeepGram hackathon. So, oops, I do want to show that one. And so we'll get that on here. So you can definitely go check that out. Go see what DeepGram is doing with Dev.2, and appreciate everybody dropping by today. Thanks for hanging out. If you've got additional questions, absolutely, you can leave comments on our videos, and we'll have this up on YouTube shortly. And then, yeah, thanks again, Becca, for your time today. Appreciate you hanging out and working through some JavaScript with me and doing something fun with some data. And
Thanks for having me.
yeah, we'll catch everybody next week and have a great week and happy April tomorrow.
Yeah.
Have a great day, everybody. Take care.
Bye.